Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer?
Present.
Counselor Urban? Counselor Fleck? Counselor Merriday?
Here.
Counselor Savage?
Here.
Counselor Stennett?
Here.
Mayor Solstein?
Here. I'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So tonight we have two special presentations. We have this evening South Lane Parks and Recreation District Formation Student Report and Introduction by Public Works and Development Director, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. This evening we have members from a steering committee that was created to explore the feasibility and possibility of creating a South Lane Parks and Recreation District. So tonight we have Darby Valley and Tiffany Williams. They'll be presenters. We also have with us from the school district, Garrett Bridgens, Brian McCaslin, and the Bob Kiefer, who is the senior consultant with the Special Districts Association. He was hired to help them facilitate this process. So at this time, I'd like to ask Darby to come up and start his presentation.
Good evening, guys. Mayor. Good. All right. So I'm here on behalf of the South Lane Park and Recreation District Steering Committee, and would like you to take a look at the beautiful slides and discuss some of the potentials that we see in our future. Something we've been trying to get done in this town for around 50 years is to create a Parks and Recreation District to maximize the benefits of the road signs for our community and to help keep our kids off the streets after school and keep them fit and working with the community. Since added to that would be, as we grow more and more retirees in our community, our mission is correct. The next slide talks about what? South Lane Parks and Recreation District be the go-to hub for recreation, enrichment, and social programs for citizens of all ages. I think we are around 17 or 19 members from various groups, associations, members of the city, members of the school district, various nonprofits and other local agencies, have been working together since last April. Consider the process of forming a Parks and Recreation District. Next slide. For over 50 years, we've had a recognized need for sustainable programs for our youth. Currently, our adult and senior services are outgrowing the current space as we get more and more older adults looking for activities especially after being isolated for the last couple of years through the COVID pandemic. We currently have services being provided by the City of Cottage Grove, by the South Lane School District, South Valley Athletics, Senior Services, quite a few other different groups all putting together ad hoc programs. Our goal is to create a more cohesive, single service agency that is able to actually better represent the Parks and Recreation needs of our community. We have recently done a survey. We've been meeting regularly since April, where we've been really going into quite extensive detail with Bob Kiefer. Bob Kiefer's put together Parks and Rec districts like Willamette Lane, areas out in Bend, and different communities throughout our state. And they've been able to make some really good, positive associations that are good for the community. We're hoping to replicate that here. We created and refined budgets for various funding levels in the Parks and Recreation District. We've been meeting with stakeholders throughout our community to keep them informed of what we want to do and how we think we should be going about doing it. Some of you are sitting in this room. You're sitting at that step above it there. We've been gathering support from the county. We have support of Commissioner Buck. I hope I said that right. I don't actually have it. I've seen it. And Lane County Public Health Prevention staff. We've also been charting a path to get this on the ballot for November of 2024. We know the county elections weren't that process. I'm sorry. Am I on for? I didn't queue it. But for them. That's the one I should look up and see what you guys are watching. Part of the labor we've been doing as part of our outreach is we actually have already commissioned one survey, one study, and we were very gratified to find 57% positive thoughts amongst the community saying that they would like that parks and recreation district. This is before education, this is before explanation of all the services that we think we can add to it. It's just, hey, you want a parks and rec district for the South Lane County area. And we were very gratified to see that 57% of the people as polled were on board. And we saw no partisan divide. That is something we're pretty excited to have, a positive bipartisan issue that we can, if you prefer, a nonpartisan issue that we can put together as the most favorable view to things that we would be wanting to provide are the low cost childcare programs for kids from preschool to middle school, especially after school programs, camps, and different sports and recreational activities. Okay. Educational wellness programs for adults and seniors that improve physical and mental health and prevent isolation. Ross, I believe in your paper copies you see our crosstabs and all the details. Yeah. So I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on that stuff. More education and outreach is needed because as we still need to finalize and refine our actual monetary ask. We have a range that we can come in at, and we're still trying to figure out what the community wants most. We have a further poll that we are slated to do in January, and should get signatures as we finalize our final petition to take to the voters. Next slide. The next steps are to basically get your support. Mayor and the Cottage Council, when we talk with the county, they're pretty excited about it and they're pretty on board. But they say if we get the city involved, and it is that much easier to show that we have both governments that govern this area as positive players in this program, it's easier to get approved and it's easier to sell to the public. Part of that, we will have another survey, as I mentioned, scheduled for next month in January. And we'll be teaming up with the University of Oregon in order to put that poll out there and be a little more detailed than the one we just did. We will also continue to meet with stakeholders throughout and support and answering any questions and getting any concerns addressed and solved so that we can have as many people in favor of this program as we go to voters. Finally, we want to really get garnered with our education to the community, let them know what can be gained. We have a lot of different things that are done that are out there. One of the biggest gains I think we're really trying to sell is we can take the recreation stuff away from the city. We can take away field and space management away from the school district. We can give it one place where people know where to go in order to book a park, or to book a room, or to schedule basketball for a season, or to where can I play volleyball, or where do my kids go for after school stuff. We want to have one place where those questions get answered and people come and say, okay. We can also do a much better job in planning. So as we look forward over the next 20 years and we have a much better pulse of what is going on in our community, what's needed, what do we need to go for as we go forward. And then we'll finally be gathering signatures and the funding needed to be placed on the ballot for 2024 ballot. We need 23 signatures left. Based on our numbers so far, we don't think we're going to have any problem achieving that goal. Not a small one, but we've got a lot of volunteers, we've got a lot of people who are enthusiastic about the project, and we've been able to get more signatures before the past, so we think it's doable. Tonight, we're asking of you to, in January, consider a resolution in support of forming a special purpose park and recreation district within the boundary of the city, as required under ORS 198, to be placed on the 2024 ballot. We are also asking you guys to help with a little bit of financial support to show the city's buy-in. Basically, what we're looking for is some legal support services. In order to make sure our program falls within all the confines, we expect about a $5,000 need for attorney fees in order to get all our T's crossed and our I's dotted so that everything is kosher from November. And then over the next year, we would like your help working with stakeholders in the broader community to develop detailed operational plans for the district and address questions from taxpayers regarding specifics of how the district would function and the benefits. Thank you. Hope we'll consider that and hope to get your support. questions.
Any other questions? Counselor Stein?
Thank you. You mentioned 57% support in the survey.
So we did a survey. I think there was outreach to about 2,500 people, 57% approval. The plus or minus was a little high still. I think it was 7%. So we're either right at the margin or we're swimming pretty good as far as current support.
Do you have a notion of why people might not support it? I mean, that seems as important when you're trying to get yours.
When you look down at the breakdowns in the tabs, it's a number of things. If you have kids, you're probably 3 or 4 times as likely to support kids. If you do not, you don't. When we've done asking, one of the things we asked was seniors. We have found many adults don't consider themselves to be seniors. Whether you're 60 or 70, there people that are older, you're not a senior. So you don't necessarily think it applies to you. From our follow-up conversations with people, we generally find as we talk and explain what it is and the relative cost of this program, that people tend to come on board. We're very enthusiastic and positive in the idea of people to get that number higher. Yeah, come on up here.
The whole is done with the greater South Lane School District voting area, and so a lot of the people we talked to live outside city limits, and there was clear that there needed to be some education done there because they didn't feel like this would be for them, that this would have services for them, that they would be a part of this, and so it's not sure that this would be part of the, not just city limits, but the greater South Lane area. So I think there needs to be part of that education piece is really important about that. So the data kind of came back with that, and we saw that.
Counselor Durham?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for sharing this information with us. Can you clarify, so the information in the packet you provided is that the boundaries of the proposed park and recreation district would be Southland School
It
District?
would be Southland School District.
Why would we create resolution just for the boundary of the city?
Because that's the only resolution we can offer.
Okay, because that's our authority.
Exactly.
But the boundaries you're proposing.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Savage?
Thank you so much, Mayor Solsby. You did touch on this already, but can you say again how many signatures you need by what date?
Only 300, I think it's early March. April, sorry, early April. And that's to give a little bit of leeway when we submit it to the recorder's office.
Thank you.
That would be at the end of it.
Thank you. Counselor Buck?
So I was fortunate enough to see draft budgets that were proposed. I do not see any buildings in what's being proposed yet. So I'm just going to share what I did Friday morning, is that I have overall love of the idea and terrible concern about the cost and the impacts on the other jurisdictions. Compression being one of them. That's going to impact the city to some extent, the fire district even more. So, in the formula, and I think to understand we've got the formula, but once we get at $10 per thousand, we're pretty darn close. City of Cottage Grove is 720 and a fraction. The county's at about 28. South Lane is 1,335. Well, that's pretty good. So we're pretty darn close to $10, if not over, in certain homes within our jurisdiction. I've heard that there will be, an assessment, but now if I'm also wondering, we're going to have future capital discussions as well. So what facility are these 25 employees going to be in? And I'm not against. I don't want to make it sound like I'm against. I just have some real concerns about the impacts. Other things, we're talking about going out for lawn for streets. Our budget is diminishing over the years. Could we need a levy for leaks? I guess, like I said, I'm not suggesting that this isn't a great proposal. I'm just also looking at, there's some other challenges. So I guess the question is, what are the capital plans? Because I did not see anything referenced around facilities.
And we are not at the capital stage. The current stage is basically to bring about specialization and management of the recreational services currently being provided by the city by the county, by the school district, and then all the nonprofits. So the idea is you're going to end up pooling the expenses, and some of the money that could possibly come into issue with compression should be relieved by it not being on your main budget. So I'm not the guy to ask this stuff, because we can get into a detailed budget discussion. We would welcome you at any one of our meetings to go through this. We do have folks on city staff who reviewed it. They seemed comfortable with it. I'm all for an extended one. I just am not going to give you a satisfactory answer as far as that goes. Long term, yeah, there is a capital need, and that's something we're going to have to face as a community. But right now, we're just trying to say, how do we better utilize the structures and the personnel that we have now in order to make the budgets make more sense?
Okay, well, like I said, I'm willing to top answers or questions answered.
Want to bring us up question both on your topics?
Okay, thank you.
I think our finance director has done a little bit of research on that one question, so if you.
Ms. Likens?
So this afternoon, I did hear from Danny Ramasco with the Lane County Tax Assessor's Office, and she indicated that at the rate that I was asked to inquire about, with the 70 cents per 100,000, there would not be any compression for the city. I can just share that with you today.
Well, this plan looks fantastic. I will echo Councilor Fleck's concerns. With my priority is always emergency services. So I would love to have the fire chief at the table on this, just to be sure going in that we have your support as well. And but I appreciate all your hard work. It looks really great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you. Do you foresee that, I didn't see specifically, says, coordinate park reservations for special events, concerts, et cetera. Do we see that perhaps in the future the ability to be kind of enterprising with maybe an amphitheater and bring some funds and some economic stimulus to?
We see the possibility of enterprising in a lot of areas. The whole idea is if you have staff and personnel that are looking, future looking and saying, here's our park and rec mission, how can we better achieve that? It's easier to find the appropriate grant. It's easier to find because that person's not distracted by looking for a new investment. That person's not distracted by looking for a street grant. They're looking for different pools of money. We can also better, charge fees that are appropriate in order to support programs. There's a lot of options as far as that goes. We know that to eventually become self-sustaining. That's the whole reason to have it as a park and rec district with some tax authority. We're cognizant of compression, that it works. There's a middle ground where you don't hit it. There's uppers where we might, there's lowers where we don't. If you fulfill your mission, there's lowers. So these are all still finalizing decision tree. We really are looking for is a desire to see the idea come to fruit and to basically get your support on the concept as we hand around this on.
It's great to hear. So much potential, in so many of our facilities. It'd be great to see what we can do.
Right.
Support together as a dedicated.
Absolutely, and that's why at the final end of the day, we're trying to put together a package that would garner the majority support of the populace of our South Lane region, that they are willing to tax themselves in order to support this project.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to commend everybody's efforts on this committee. It's been going on for some time, and a lot of support. And I would also share the concerns over all of the competing interests. But I think this is also an opportunity that has long been needed. Part of the interest that I had getting into this originally was just a realization in this area where covered, the year-round recreational facilities, and I think there's so much pent-up demand for that. And then going through, starting with kids and being around other parents, just realized that that's far beyond the scope even my imagination was what the demand was. So I think there'll be strong support. I do think that it really does need to be streamlined in terms of, it needs to be a really well-functioning department that, so I appreciate the surveys going out, really garnering the information about what the residents and the people in the district want to see. And really like the ideas of it being an economic driver for this area and being further attractive. I think it can have a lot of benefit in that arena as well, pull from homes, long distances potentially. So just want to appreciate your openness to answer questions and the invitations, and I also echo the bringing the fire department in as much as possible to get those concerns addressed.
So, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for
Thank you
your
for your time. Thank you.
Question, would you send us an email with your meeting times?
Sure.
Item B, food forest presentation. Requested by Mayor Solzy and Council President Urban.
The floor is yours.
Okay, I need to share my screen. Can I get an invitation to do that?
Dan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name is Dan Sloan. I'm the Executive Director of Portland Food Forest Initiative. We're a nonprofit in Northeast Portland that converts homeowners and public lawns into perennial productive gardens. I'm also a member of Portland Placemaking Coalition, and that's a group of nonprofits that works to make Portland a more livable space through pro-social and eco-social infrastructure. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Before we talk about food forests, I'd like to talk about placemaking. And placemaking is a multifaceted approach to the design and management of public spaces, and a lot of there are a lot of organizations in Portland right now that are doing placemaking work to make the city more livable and more pleasant and more inviting. Some examples of placemaking include gathering spaces, recreational spaces, gardens, play areas, public art like intersection paintings, and public food forests. A very large scale example of public placemaking is the Tom McCall waterfront in Portland, which used to be an enormous concrete freeway and is now a very pleasant cherry blossom lined walking space and public space. I'm going to play a video real quick that will talk about food forests, and I'll come back.
If you do nothing to a piece of land in temperate climates, it will become a forest. The forces of nature are actively moving the land towards a balanced, sustainable, and resilient ecosystem. This is called succession. In southwest England, an unusual forest is growing. Nut trees, shrubs, and perennial vegetables are planted in a way that mimics a natural woodland. This forest garden is the life's work of Martin Crawford, an unconventional gardener who grows 500 edible plants with just a few hours of maintenance per month.
What we think of as normal in terms of food production is actually not normal at all. Annual plants are very rare in nature, and yet most of our agricultural fields are full of annual plants. It's not normal. What's normal is a more forested or semi-forested system. Forest gardens in a temperate climate tend to have 7 layers or so: high trees, smaller trees, shrubs, perennials, ground cover layers, root crops, and climbers. So it includes directly useful plants, many types of fruit trees, both the common ones and much less common fruit trees, all the types of nuts, tuber crops, vegetables, medicinal plants, timber, but also logs that you might grow other things on, like mushrooms. There are also plants of indirect use, system plants, to help the system function better, and that includes nitrogen-fixing plants, mineral accumulators, plants to attract beneficial insects to eat all your pests. Forest gardens are very beautiful places to be in, because although they're managed, the management is light, so they have this very naturalistic feel to them, and it is more like being out in nature than being in a cultivated garden. It can seem a bit overwhelming. There's so many different species. You shouldn't let that stop you from beginning a project, because you don't have to know everything to begin with. Just start, plant some trees and go from there. It's not the gradually increasing temperatures that damage plants. It's the increase in extreme events, big storms, big winds, very heavy rain, hail, droughts. By having a very diverse system, whatever happens to the weather, most of your crops will probably do fine. Some may fail, some may do better. That's very important going into the future, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen to our weather. So by having a diverse system, it gives you maximum resilience.
Okay, so understanding ecological succession is really important in understanding why food forests are important. Almost all of the urban landscapes that we find are artificially maintained pioneer stage ecosystems or landscapes, like lawns and veggie gardens. They're very expensive to maintain. You need a lot of water, maintenance, and fertilizer. Conversely, a mature food forest after 10 to 20 years more closely resembles the climax community ecosystem. And as stated in the video, once it establishes itself, it requires very little maintenance. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Community gardens are important. They're great for access to land, which most people don't have. But they focused on annuals and not perennials. It's very different than a food forest. They encourage individualism as opposed to collaboration. If you have your 10 by 10 garden plot, you don't ever have to talk to anybody or interact with anybody. Oftentimes they're more concentrated in affluent communities, which limits who gets to actually participate in community gardening. They require a lot of labor and water, and oftentimes the soil is quite depleted once you get access to a plot, which requires a lot of fertilizer importation. And if anyone has gardened before, they know that it takes a lot of practice to actually get a decent harvest. So there's a big learning curve and inconsistent outcomes. The fruit and nut tree guild, conversely, is the basic component of an urban food forest, and it doesn't take any skill to harvest a yield. The guild maximizes photosynthesis and sequestration of carbon. There are thousands and thousands of leaves in this system, and each leaf is like a little solar panel, and that collects sunlight and turns that into carbon. All the layers of the food forest produced either food, fiber, fuel, medicine, and or habitat. So some of them provide more than one benefit. Here are the layers on the bottom right that explain some examples of plants that could grow in those specific niches. There are two main types of food forestry: syntropic agroforestry and the forest garden. Syntropic agroforestry is the most productive and intensive use of space and sun of any agricultural system. It provides a ton of food and not so much community and habitat, whereas the forest garden is best suited for community building, pro-social behavior, and habitat. I'll talk about syntropic agroforestry just for a bit. Typically, you have linear tree guilds instead of circular tree guilds that are in 5-foot wide tree rows that extend the length of your planting, with 15-foot wide aisles in the middle that are planted with annual veggies and biomass producers, which can be used to mulch the tree rows and provide fertility. So it's a closed loop system. You don't have to bring in wood chips. You don't have to bring in manure. All the fertility is grown on site. And while you're waiting for the trees to grow and produce their fruit or their nuts, you have annual veggies in the middle. Like in this picture, you have squash and chard growing, and those produce immediately. So you get a yield immediately while you're waiting for the longer lived plants to come into production. Now, forest gardens provide more habitat and more opportunities for community building. They have circular tree and nut guilds, meandering pathways, gathering spaces, pro-social design elements like benches, meeting areas, picnic areas, stuff like that. You can still grow annual veggies in this design. So you can have your lettuce and your chard and your tomatoes and your squash, but it produces much more habitat than syntropic agroforestry systems does because there are more little niches and spaces. This is the design best suited for community building and creates a lot of pro-social behavior and encourages better mental health. This is an example of a syntropic design that my organization planted in someone's backyard starting last year. This is their very unhappy lawn you can see on the left with a sad little dog. And we covered the lawn with brown paper and 6 inches of arborist wood chips in November. Planted in April of 2023, we planted trees 13 feet apart with 3 foot wide veggie rows in the aisles. And then by July, it's this booming young food forest, and it's only going to get more productive and lush and fertile as the wood chips break down and the trees become bigger and everything drops more organic matter on the ground. By July and August, there was tons of insect life, tons of bird life, tons of fungal life in the wood chips, which indicates that we're restoring an ecosystem to what was a very degraded landscape in the sad lawn in the last slide. Another example is Rhythm Seed Farm in Northeast Portland, not far from the Cully site. This goes from bare soil, which was a lawn, to a booming pollinator habitat after just a few months. And another example that's really interesting is from Bend. This is a church in Southeast Bend. And Bend is a really harsh, cold, and dry environment. And they have terrible soil there. Like there's no orchards there. There's no fruit production in the Bend area because of that. And through deep mulch wood chipping, they were able to turn this site into a very productive space that provided a ton of food for the community, the immediate community, and the surrounding community. So deep mulch is the foundation of a temperate food forest, which is where we are in the Willamette Valley. And wood chips solve almost all the problems that you have in regular veggie gardens and also in orchards. And I'm not talking about wood chips that you get from a supply yard delivered to you. I'm talking about the fresh arborist wood chips you get straight out the back of an arborist truck. Those are the branches and leaves that are shredded up, not just the trunk of the tree, which is mostly just cellulose. So this, when applied deeply, suppresses almost all weeds. It builds soil organic matter incredibly rapidly, and soil organic matter is one of the most important metrics of soil health. For every 1% you increase soil organic matter per acre, you store 16,000 gallons of water and fix 10 tons of carbon into the soil permanently. And this also reduces and almost sometimes eliminates the need to water during the summer. And you can see in the bottom right, all those watermelons were grown without any irrigation at all. So all that water filling those watermelons came from the soil stored in the soil during the spring. Wood chips support the growth of all trees, shrubs, and veggies, and creates wonderful habitat for soil microorganisms and, more importantly, mushrooms, which I'll talk about in a minute. Monocultures are what all of our grocery store fruit and nuts are grown in. They're grown in orchards. They have bare soil and one kind of fruiting tree at the exclusion of all other life forms, essentially. Like there's no fungus, there's no birds, no insects, no other plants. And because of this poor ecological practice and sometimes innate susceptibility to pest and disease of the tree cultivars, they have to rely on enormous amounts of petroleum, pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides to keep the trees alive. as well as draining rivers and aquifers to irrigate them. If you ever drive up I-5 in California, you see all those billboards advocating for more water rights for farmers who are growing trees in bare soil with no other plants growing around them. Additionally, the ironic thing is that when it rains in these spaces, it floods. Like all the hazelnut orchards in the valley in Oregon all flood when it rains because there's no porosity in the soil, there's no water infiltration. And so by adding wood chips, you can create porosity, infiltration, and capture that water on the landscape instead of having it run off and take the fertility of the topsoil with it. Now, polycultures are what food forests are, and they promote natural pest management through ecological diversity. So that they have so many different kinds of plants growing in them, and all these plants provide an ecosystem benefit or food for humans. That's their strength. It's naturally balanced and therefore not susceptible to pest and disease in the way that orchards and even organic farms are. And the wood chips also prevent soil-borne pathogens from splashing up onto the leaves of the plants, so you short-circuit that pathogen cycle. There are concerns about pest and disease that people have, and a lot of them are entirely removed from the food forest through integrated pest management. There are concerns that food forests exacerbate rodent pest issues, and this is a concern I've heard from people who have no experience actually working in food forests or orchards or gardens. There is no habitat for rats in these systems because there's too much exposure to predators, especially from above. Additionally, proactively mitigating fallen fruit and either redirecting it towards livestock as high quality livestock feed or composting on site eliminates that food source for rodents. Using chop and drop creates green mulch or green manure, as it's called, where you can just chop down quick biomass accumulator plants that increase fertility on site. And then on the bottom picture, that's a system of rodent-proof compost bays made of cinder blocks. There are a lot of trees and shrubs that are not even susceptible to pest and disease in our environment. And this is a list of different ones. And additionally, these provide a lot of micronutrients and phytonutrients that are not available in the foods you get in the supermarket, in the fruits that you buy, or fruits that are grown in typical orchards in the Willamette Valley. The return on investment for a fruit or nut tree is unparalleled. There's nothing else you can get. You can spend $10 on or plant a seed for free and get tens of thousands of dollars worth of produce over the lifetime of the plant. This is the most sustainable method of producing food. It doesn't require tillage, it doesn't require importation of fertilizer, or pesticide, fungicide, or petroleum in any way. Nuts are incredibly important for passive food security, especially as things become less and less certain as far as centralized food production goes and industrialized food production. Nut trees are very long-lived. There are chestnut trees that are 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Nut trees provide fat and protein that is almost impossible to come by in the context of gardens and orchards. And they provide reliable crops every year without human intervention. Once they're established, they just produce nuts and you just collect them off the ground.
Dan, are you close? Okay.
Yes, I'll go real quick. Annual maintenance is very light. You just got to do a few things, keep the food forest happy. Educational opportunities, this is huge. I don't want to skip over this. There are huge educational opportunities for youth, for environmental education, increasing ecological literacy, and creating a sense of place and stewardship over the land base. Community engagement, the public food forest necessitates community engagement because that's who's going to maintain it. It's not going to be maintained by the park district or the city. That's going to be maintained by the community, and reduces environmental injustice brought on by redlining and racist housing policies, as a food forest is open to everybody regardless of their socioeconomic status, race, or class. There are enormous mental health benefits of nature immersion, especially getting your hands in soil. That's even more important. And when your hands are in the soil, they're not texting or on the phone. There are violence reduction implications, especially with youth who are involved. in green space activities and other extracurricular activities, and they're much more likely to go on graduate high school and embark on successful career paths. There are enormous benefits to the community ecosystem and food security. Here's a bunch of them, but most importantly, public block scale food forest in Cottage Grove would be first in Oregon, and it would be a huge inspiration to others from around the nation. And as they say, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. That is my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Councilor Fair.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dan, for this presentation. What is block scale food forest?
Yeah, that refers to a food forest that takes up a city block size piece of land. So it could be like a parkway in between two sidewalks, or a literal city block that's undeveloped.
Anyone else? Well, we really appreciate the presentation, Dan. We'll be looking closer at this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Items to be added to the agenda. We do have one. It's first note to establish city council rules. No items may be added to the agenda with the unanimous consent of the council members present. It's recommended that the following item be added to the agenda as item 9C. We're going to set a date for a work session to discuss issues surrounding homelessness. Okay. Appearance of interested citizens for items not on the agenda.
So with that, I would move that we have under item 9C, setting a date for work session to discuss issues surrounding homelessness.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. This is the time for citizens' comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer to provide the name and address, and will be allowed up to 3 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matters scheduled for public hearing may be provided only during that hearing. Comments on agenda items may be taken prior to council discussion on that item. The council will not make any decisions based on public comment at this time. However, staff and council may choose to ask questions or comment following the conclusion of the citizens' comment. Patrick Cartwright.
Council, I am here with an issue tonight. I was approached by 6 people from the 99 site today. Concerns ranging from being kicked out because they participated in a drive that we did to get them food handlers cards. There was 2 individuals that, and this is why they was kicked out of there. They was given 2 hours to terminate their shelter. As far as I know, there hasn't been any kind of examination of that program to carry it forward to bring out there by council. Maybe off base, but I think that we kind of need to start having programs coming to an end soon or up for renewal. And I think that perhaps maybe the council should start looking into what's actually happening out there instead of just shoveling money. So when we start getting hit with several complaints by people and concerns, asking, what do I do? How do I deal with this? I can't answer these questions for them. Let you guys this job. But we're providing a space for them to be. We're providing a resource that they could get out of their chose to. What's actually happening? I personally went over because I was told that they couldn't use the kitchen facilities without having a food handler's card. We had an event at my business where we helped them take their tests online. And I personally paid for, I think it was like 1,000 people to get the food handler's cards. Then all of a sudden, there was a change that happened, and they wasn't allowed to go and use the kitchen facilities after all this. So I think that we need to have a little visit and some oversight. I'd like to also comment on the gentleman that was just here. And even though this is just the city's issue, everybody knows what's happening up Brown River. And another tax burden up there at this point is going to be detrimental to a lot of people. So I urge you guys to kind of look into that a little bit, because we don't have a fire district up there as it is. There's been several homes that's burnt to the ground up there because the fire department is in danger to turn away. So they have to come back. Brown River Fire District, who knows what's going to happen? We're going to be burdened with 2 fire taxes. So we'll have Brown River, because they don't provide emergency services for medical or anything, then they're stuck with South Lane. So just questions to ask. I encourage you guys to do that before you make a decision. Think of the neighbors that's outside of city limits as well, because they all work in a part of this community. Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Mr. Carter, how many people did you say last year?
6 today. 6 today.
Do you have names?
I am. One of the gentlemen's names, Ross, he was given 2 hours to get out of there the other day, and he's been very vocal with asking about why they're stuck cooking in a shed or tent and stuff. Laura's another lady that's.
Point of order, it's really uncomfortable for us to hear in a public meeting.
Yeah, we don't need the names here, but if you.
Yes. Yeah. No problem.
The city to know.
I will send, who should I send it to? Well, city manager? Yes. I'll send you what I have. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Mike Ford.
My name is Mike Moore, I live at 310 Road, Douglas. I'm sort of I just heard that we are going to have a homeless meeting coming up. I'm very happy about that. But in the meantime, it's been 2 years. We haven't done anything. The situation is the same. And I think it's time to really start looking at what the roles and responsibilities are for citizens, city council, and the in-house here in Cottage Grove. I've been looking at the budgets and what we have, what we spent the last 2 years, and it's a sizable number. And when we look at what we're trying to do, go over, like this one with the sports program, that is a phenomenal program. But now coming from Springfield with Willamette Lane and what that charges per 1,000, that's a hefty little fee for a lot of people. And just this last summer with the water rates that we took up, affected a lot of people out there that they had to give up something to have water. So we really need to take a look at those type of things going forward. But what I want to talk a little bit about was just 3 initiatives that I had set forth with the city attorney that has taken a look at them. She has, I think I refilled them back out, turned them back in, and I'd like you guys to take a look at them. And maybe this is a time when we get into the work session. One of them does address the homeless and what are some of the steps out there. And what I like to do is have, as we get through it, because I'm all for helping them how they want to be helped. I really feel sorry for people that have food handlers licenses. We need to get them, and that's what I look at on 99 is a spot where people that really want it, they're clean, they want to get better, give them some training, let's get them, in the back in the city. I'm all for that. I never said I had it. But the ones that choose not to, those are the ones that we need to have some hard consequences out there with rules and boundaries, and just not let them. We're just warehousing right now until they either leave or die. That's basically what we're doing. So what I want to do is just let's get this out and take a look at when in January we're looking at, so we know. Dan and I have talked a lot of times about setting up this type of meeting and getting the right people. Let's get some actual. Let's not talk about it. Let's get something done. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearings, I see none. Consent agenda. Second. Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Resolutions and ordinances. Item A, resolution adopting the Cottage Grove Urban Forest Management Plan. Staff report from Mr. Malkin.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the November 27th regular council meeting, the council requested staff amend the draft urban forest management plan to include language in support of agroforestry, much in line with Dan's presentation we just heard. Staff has made those amendments and at this time recommends adoption of the attached resolution.
City clerk, do we have a resolution number?
2120.
Councilor?
Mayor, move that resolution 2120 be adopted.
Second. We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please call
I'm
it?
sorry, I have a question. Thank you, Mayor. So to clarify, the issue on page, is that what was added to the?
Mayor, Councilor Jerry, yes. So under community needs, we added, I added some language regarding our existing community gardens program, how we can move those towards different types. I think some of those, that insight that Dan offered us this evening is a great example of how they can work in a partnership, I think, as opposed to being siloed. So it would just be an opportunity to look at other avenues to create those spaces.
Thank you. I just want to note that I have some concerns about liability for creating a guide for locating edible plants because it's very easy to misidentify. So I have great reservations about promoting as the city anything that would say, identify this, you can eat it. I would recommend we not do that. I appreciate the changes.
We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councilor Savage? Councilor Stennett?
Aye.
Councilor Merida?
Aye.
Councilor Dreer? Councilor Urban?
Aye.
Councilor Fleck?
Aye.
Mayor Solsby?
Aye. Motion passes. Item B, resolution adopting the City of Cottage Grove dress code policy. Staff report by Human Resource Manager. And begin.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. You have before you a proposed resolution to adopt an updated dress code policy to be included in the recently adopted personnel manual. Please note that you were inadvertently presented a draft version at Friday's agenda session. There is one change within the proposed policy. Under prohibited attire, clothing that reveals the employee's undergarments was removed. It was discussed with supervisory staff that this specific issue is not deemed relevant or necessary. There were no changes to the proposed resolution. As part of my role, I am continuously reviewing policies, and with my comprehensive review of the 2023 personnel manual, it was discovered that a dress code policy was not included. The previous policy within the old personnel manual was vague and not as comprehensive as the policy you have before you. In order to create clear and defined expectations and set employees up for success, we have created a more comprehensive dress code policy, incorporating several templates from various cities. It is staff's recommendation that the council approve the proposed resolution to add the dress code policy to the current City of Cottage Grove personnel manual. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Questions? Councilor?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you elaborate on the removal of that particular policy?
Yeah, so we took a lot of different policies and worked them together to make them what is applicable to what we experience in our staff and what things we have to enforce, and that just was something that really has never came up, and so we figured it was not necessary to include it.
Is this the resolution that's out of order?
So this one will be 2122.
Is that not 2121?
2121 was adopted
11/27, commitment to support a planning loan application.
I'm glad I asked. Madam Mayor, I move that the council adopt resolution 2122.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? All right, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Meredith?
Aye.
Counselor Stennen?
Aye.
Counselor Savage? Aye. Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Urban?
Aye.
Counselor Dreer? Mayor Solsky?
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item C. Resolution amending the City of Cottage Grove Personal Manual, staff report by interim manager, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This matter was before you on November 27th. Staff request was withdrawn, but the full report in time. Included in your packet is also the written report that was presented at that time with some additional items noted in the prior act. Just as a reminder, this is the request is to the employee share of personal contributions, non-representative employees. Representative employees all have that within their contract agreements with the city. So this is the one group of employees that do not have that pickup. It is very uncommon in your competition, other cities to have provision. So I'd say that for the city, this is really an issue of recruiting, retention. And our concern is that salary compression, and we're trying to provide opportunities for people to move up in the city from one position to the next. We've experienced some public works, rapid experiences in our police department to move from a representative position, which has a 6% coverage to a non-representative position, typically results in a very tight salary gap, and they lose, and the employees lose the protections of the union agreements. So there's not much built-in incentive to make that move. So the salaries in the police department to move from, say, a sergeant to a captain, or is a change from representative to non-representative, means that the captain has to come in at the top of the range from day one and just have enough to have any kind of salary difference whatsoever from a sergeant that is full time in the first pay and full time paid. So that's one example. This is fully funded by virtue of a deferral of the implementation of the salary survey that has not been completed, but having been completed, we budgeted for more than the cost of this program, and also some stipends that you've been providing to offset the employee stability. The employee pension stability stays at to fund a variation of PERF from the state. We provide this stipend to our employees that was comfortable to what we're losing in that change over the statute the years down. So altogether, it is a I would recommend that you do this, make this change. It obviously has not been me, so it's easy, it's, I'm not being from a position of conflict of interest to it. With that, take any questions that you might have, otherwise we're recommending that you make this approval, this change.
Councilor Fleck.
Just one clarification, I mean, to the end of the year, this is covered. In the future, it certainly will impact our budget going forward.
It will impact the budget, but to be fair, you will probably be doing, I mean, we are actually undergoing a salary survey now, or we'll be shortly at, but we're doing an outside review instead of an inside review, so we'll get into what the interest conflict of interest. And staff will be coming back to you during the course of the 24 budget preparation to include the results of that survey at some level of implementations. So one way or another, there could be, if you want to remain competitive in the marketplace for the secondary people that you hire and retaining, you will be faced with budgetary impacts, salary changes in the marketplace.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I totally support absolutely that the representative should be receiving the same thing a representative. And with that, that we move that City Council adopt resolution 2123. Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any other discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Dreer?
Aye.
Counselor Urban?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck? Counselor Merity?
Aye.
Counselor Savage? Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Mayor Solsby?
Aye. Motion passes. Item D, resolution extending workers' compensation coverage to volunteers of the city of Cottage Grove. Staff report by our finance director, Ms. Lenz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your package, you had a memorandum explaining the need to extend workers' compensation coverage to volunteers. We've been providing that coverage for the past 19 years that I've been here. In this situation, we want to be able to utilize volunteers at the golf course, specifically in the pro shop and in maintenance. A lot of times we have golfers from the men's club that want to volunteer their time to help make the course and facility better place to golf. So the staff's recommendation that the city council approve the proposed resolution adding coverage for those volunteers at Middlefield Golf Course. I did do a quick analysis of what that cost would be. Say if we had someone that wanted to volunteer to put the carts away, clean carts, put them away, and did that for 2 hours on a specific day during the week, you're looking at a cost of 34 cents per day or $35.36 per year versus an employee that we would pay $15 to do the same job. And with benefits, you're looking at about $1,950 per year. So that's the cost differential, utilizing volunteers versus hiring employees to do that. Volunteers aren't always available, but it's nice to be able to use them if they're interested in providing that service.
Questions? Councilor Fleck?
Madam Mayor, I move that the city council adopt resolution 2124.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any other discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Savage? Counselor Stennett?
Aye.
Counselor Merity? Counselor Dreer? Counselor Urban?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck? Mayor Solsky?
Motion carries. Budget and audit committee recruitment, staff report by Ms. Lyons.
So what I'm asking at this time is that the council appoint a 3-member council subcommittee to review and consider applications received and to interview the applicants for the open positions on the budget committee and the audit committee.
I can vote for the budget.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So we have Councilor Fleck, Councilor Urban, and Councilor Savage.
We can do that for audit as well. And I'm happy to.
Yes.
I assume they're separate committees.
You could have the same committee or you could have 2 separate committees. It
And
doesn't-
I'm happy to do that.
Do that? Do that? Okay. Same thing.
Thank you.
And then all right. Item B, unhoused reports. Staff report by Assistant City Manager, Mr. Boone, and Interim City Manager, Mr. Klein, and City Attorney, Ms. Klein.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before you, you have the third quarter homelessness reports from Highway 99 and from our designated camping areas. And to answer questions if such exist, I will note that this time round, at least for the designated camping areas, it was a little more challenging to contact folks there to get a good count because when the weather is bad, people tend to stay inside tents and not want to necessarily come out in the rain to answer my nosy questions.
Any questions? No.
So, thank you for presenting this. We had some conversation on Friday about this, and I think primary takeaway for me was that we look forward to continuing the conversations with the council as a whole. addressing the aspects of the report that are frustrating or problematic, and the ability to garner information. So appreciate you putting it together, and forward to discussing it again.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We talked about this on Friday, but I want to clarify today. Somebody different filled out this report for carry forward
Yes.
this time around. And my understanding is that we are building a better questionnaire that will be a lot easier for them to understand and fill in versus what we were given. Is there another plan to have somebody from Carry It Forward to give us another presentation or talk to us and answer questions?
I am certain that can be done. I don't know exactly when. I mean, offhand, I don't know when it's scheduled for the next official. They come in and talk to you all directly. So I can't tell you that right now, but I can find it.
I was noticing that it does say on here, number of food handling cards secured at 0. So if we can actually look into that, for what we're hearing back from citizens.
I think that would be if the food handling cards were obtained off-site at Mr. Cartwright's business, then they wouldn't appear here because they weren't secured under the auspices of Carry It Forward. I imagine that's why it would not show up there.
I do found that comment really interesting because I thought that was something that Carry It Forward was providing. So I'd like to learn more. I think they are providing it, but what were the circumstances? So I don't know if that's something that could be reviewed.
Thank you.
So you,
Okay.
if you can hear me, no mouthpiece. I'll just talk about it. There's the butter. So I've also shared in detail some of the document I reported in your packet. So some of my things surrounding that report, I believe you've added to your agenda when I see tonight, in response to some of the confusion I think that we've expressed from the side, expressed to you about our, path forward. I think that's why you added the whole work session to be able to talk about. Thank you for that. And really, that's what I was looking to hopefully achieve, because I think staff ultimately is up to the report. It really could use a little consensus direction on which where, because we know we need to raise funds when full money runs out. And there's some things that continue to confuse, and it's a way to not the leadership level will really help us out. So I think with action purchases,
So I just wondered, I'm happy to attend the work session, depending on when you all decide to set it, and we can talk about issues in more detail at that time. But it seemed like it might be helpful for the council and for members of the public to just sort of talk about, for me to provide a very synopsized primer on why we have this issue. It is unconstitutional to cite anybody for sitting, lying, sleeping, keeping warm and dry within the city limits. It was decided by the Ninth Circuit, and it was codified by the Oregon legislature. So that's something that the city just can't do. And given the proliferation of individuals sitting, lying, sleeping, keeping warm and dry in this is in public spaces. So you could cite them on private property, but not on public property. And so given the proliferation of individuals on public property, the council, we concluded the process a year ago, but 2 years before that, the council wrestled with various policy options of what to do in terms of managing public property. And so it's time to revisit that, but if those parameters continue, we still have to work within them. And there's a number of different ways that you can operate. It is lawful to clear an established campsite, and the management, the parks management, and the members of this council, or I should say the city council at the time, adopted, intentionally set that any area that you open for camping for unhoused individuals is not a permanent place, it's temporary. And you are able to clear that with 72 hours notice. I've worked with staff on developing the proper notice. It has to be in English and Spanish. It has to be provided to social service providers in the area. And after 72 hours, then individuals are supposed to be gone, and if they aren't gone, you can clear the area and clear their belongings. The city then needs to maintain personal property within the boundaries of the city at a reasonable location, an accessible location for 30 days. So it isn't like your hands are tied, but if campsites are cleared, other areas need to be available. Nobody gets to be pushed outside the city boundaries, so it always is a moving issue. And sometimes policymakers decide that managing an area, a stable area, is less costly than moving those areas around within the city's borders on various areas of public property. But you have 3 tiers of public property identified in your management plan. And those are all available if current existing campsites, designated campsite areas are problematic. And then as a follow-up to that, individuals in any designated area do need to follow the law. So not only is the city able to enforce reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, which is what you instituted when you adopted your parks management plan, in the best advice we could give at the time. But anyone who's violating laws that don't pertain to city life, sleeping, keeping warm and dry in public places, are enforceable. And to the extent that any one individual violates park regulations enough times, you do have an exclusion policy that can allow the law enforcement to exclude individuals, violators, from either portions of the park where the violations occurred or the full park where the violations occurred. Again, another area of the city, another public property would need to be available for city line keeping, city lines living, keeping warm and dry. At no time does that constitutional restriction go away. At no time does anybody rise to the level of being able to be transported out of town. So I just wanted to give sort of an overview of that to remind us all of how did we get here, what can we do, and we can talk a lot more about what that looks like during the work session. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here to give us insight. One of the topics that I'd like clarity on, I expect an answer this meeting, is clarity on the permitted uses of whatever spaces are designated. I've heard some, but see this conflicting information about, the zoning of, say, the unmanned sites and what, how they have to be treated, how they, what they're zoned for versus what not, like clarity around, what is permitted activity in those sites, as it relates to being listed.
Probably my strongest recommendation would be, let's not look to your zoning code for park resident or unhoused individual restrictions. And instead, you would probably want to set a different set of management time, reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions that apply to areas that you choose to open up to allow unhoused to camp. That's my first line of recommendation. And then to the extent that zoning might apply to a structure, I would be tread very lightly, because what we're really looking at is those constitutional restrictions and then the state statutory restriction. If land use law really is not applicable to the unhoused crisis that the whole state is facing.
So one of the concerns of residents in and around the sites that was expressed that relates to that was, say, the number of animals that can be on site. And in my understanding, that kind of has to do with, you know, we're in the city limits, there's a number of ducks you can have, or dogs, or whatever the case is. And so that would actually matter in setting up sites and planning, setting up potentially new sites. Total lot of space, when we're talking about putting up, you know, barriers between. So that's the thought behind the questions. We want to understand what can be done in there. Is it a violation or is it not? Under what?
So I would think that if you wanted to use whatever your zoning code says on a household by household basis, and if you think that that is a reasonable restriction to apply to a campsite by campsite basis, then you would include that in your parks management plan to say if and when public space is open for individual campsites for unhoused individuals, we're putting a reasonable restriction on pets or dogs or something like that. And if it coincides with your zoning code, that's great, but I wouldn't say that your zoning code is restricting what a camper can have in your public space.
Trying to read between the lines here a little bit. Am I missing that these spaces are just parks? They're considered parks?
Well, what I'm talking about the site. So I thought you were talking about designating. Let me just put some bones on what I think you're saying. What I think you're saying is that if we open up a park and we have 20 sites of 10 by 10 each, or less than that, probably would be smaller than that, 5 by 8, say. Well, how many pets is reasonable for that camper to manage and for the impact on other campers in that area? And it would go on a site-by-site basis. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't set a 250 dog restriction on the park. I would have each camper be responsible for the number of pets or part of their family. And we know that pet restrictions can eliminate certain spaces from being considered an alternative housing, alternative bed, but I think a reasonable restriction. So you wouldn't say no dogs, but you could set some limit.
Council Fleck.
But the same challenge exists if they like to exclude them from that. You still have to have a place for them to stay. Right. Which is the frustration for, I think, all of us in this, that if we want to help people, holding them accountable for behaviors is core to actually getting folks motivated into doing things in a better way. And I'm as frustrated as everybody else in this room, I'm sure, because I want to help these folks actually be more successful, and this actually allows that to continue. And so I'm very frustrated by that. And that's why I certainly want to have a meeting, to discuss that. But I just also look to, we talked about nuisance ordinances, around, the trash and whatnot in those, unmanaged sites, which is horrible. This is squalor. I don't want any of those conditions, and so we do have to fix this absolutely. But it is very frustrating, and our hands are tied in that we could move them from there, then we have to, allow them somewhere else. There have been some suggestions. This is what I want to talk about going forward with our, meeting that we're going to set in the next agenda item is what can we do to help, this situation, short of this going back to the Supreme Court and the legislature changing, House Bill 3115, which, obviously we're not anywhere at, but at the end of the day, I do hope that there's some sort of compromise where, we can get folks the help that they need and deserve and hold them their feet to the fire, to help them along that.
Ms. Conley, I think what Counselor is getting at is we've received a lot of complaints from neighbors around your cliff sites saying that there's numerous dogs in there, which of course we know. And their argument is that's one address and that they get 2 or 3 dogs, I believe, per address. And so what is the city's approach to that? And what we've been told is we treat it like it's an apartment complex. And is that a legal standing, I guess, for the city to say that? And so that's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine having a 3-dog limit for an apartment complex? You would never enforce it.
But it's not necessarily zoned for an apartment complex. And so that's the argument. And so, and
the, okay. You know a lot more.
The Douglas property is zoned R2, multi-family residential, so that is a zone, if you will. The site 12 behind Dairy Mart is community commercial, which does allow for multi-family development as well.
So remember my first cautionary tale is, please let's not apply zoning code restrictions to overflow campsites. That's just apples and oranges.
balancing act because, you know, we've got the residents that are upset too. So it's.
Then let's make a restriction that makes sense, but don't arbitrarily decide that some page of your code actually applies to campsites, which it doesn't. And then if it did, it would be the better analogy. It's a site-by-site analysis. So if it were you to apply your zoning and please don't, then you would look to see whether more than 3 pets per tent, if you really wanted to do that. I would, again, just not recommend it, but that's the analysis. And I actually think that the term used in your code is household pet. So again, that just indicates it's by house or living residence as opposed to structural or parcel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is there any guidance you can give us when we do have bad behavior among the camp members that they feel they have the power to have a good neighborhood because of certain individuals within the camp that will not follow any sort of rules? And what is our options?
Law enforcement can cite individuals. I mean, they shouldn't be vigilantes, but you do have law enforcement that can enforce city adopted code. And to the extent that behavior rises to the level of a code violation, there can be citations issued and falls from that. And then I can't remember what the threshold is. It's different for different types of violations. But if the threshold is hit, then a park exclusion could apply. And the citing officer can issue the order. There's a period of time that the individual has to appeal that order. And then there's a period of time, 90 days, I can't remember exactly what it is, that the cited or the ordered individual is excluded from the park.
But would have to be accommodated elsewhere.
Correct.
And if mental illness is the issue that leads to the behavior.
I don't do law enforcement. I would defer to your law enforcement department. They are professionals at issuing citations, and the guideline provided in your management plan is the first interaction is going to be trying to connect individuals with the services that they need. And citations are really the secondary fallback. But my understanding is that some violators have control of their behavior and they feel that they have carte blanche and nobody's going to do anything about it. In that case, I just want to reassure the council members of the public and tell law enforcement if there are code violations that aren't associated with sitting nicely and keeping warm and dry that you are waiving currently, normal procedures apply.
And thank you. A second follow-up question on the issue of belongings. Can belongings exceed designated site, their recourse.
So depending on what your reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions include, then yes. No one individual has the authority, whether constitutional or statutory right, to exceed those restrictions, assuming that they're adopted and being enforced.
And reasonable.
And reasonable. They would not be adopted were they not reasonable. Right, and as Councilor Urban just pointed out, all of the restrictions, one of the things that ORS 195530 requires is that any reasonable time, place, and manner, that reasonableness is measured from the perspective of an unhoused individual, not the neighbors. So that's a helpful point. Thank you for raising that.
Chief, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I was just gonna say, just as far as, what we're doing in the camps, Thank you, Mayor. So as far as the direction that I've been given to my staff is that, we are taking enforcement action at those designated campsites. The challenge that we run into, and as we've been discussing tonight, is issuing those exclusion notices from those designated campsites. If we exclude somebody from Douglas, they end up at 12th Street, and there's bad behavior there, and we exclude them from 12th Street, where they go. So, and the legal guidance that we've been given is that we do have to allow them a place to sleep or sit. So that then becomes a city park or a city sidewalk, or other public space. So I don't know that our staff has been issuing exclusion notices in those sites and excluding people from 12th Street or Douglas Street. I can look for that data specifically, but what we are doing is responding and working through any sort of call or service that we get there as we would anywhere else in the city. And my expectation is that my staff do a thorough investigation, and if probable cause exists to cite somebody for criminal behavior, then absolutely that's what they should be doing. So it's not a zone for them where police aren't going to go in there, police aren't going to hold people accountable for their criminal behavior or alleged criminal behavior, just because they're in one of those sites.
Councilor Urban.
Thank you for speaking to this. If you're not given any exclusions, that immediately thought, well, whoever the encampment is and what regional park must be those that were excluded from the overflow sites. But
and this is part of that, what was that?
Well, there's an encampment in North Regional Park between this golf course and the golf course. I think a TV went up a day or two ago. Okay. So I wonder if there's rounds being made and the other park areas or what might be going on.
So Mayor, Councilor Urban, if I'm following where you're at, that specific encampment is on ODOT's property. It's not on the city property. We have informed ODOT of that encampment, and they're handling their situations as they have resources to do it.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Item C, item to be added to our agenda. We're going to set the date for our homelessness work session.
I would recommend that our new city manager get their feet under them before we jump into it, so I'm thinking February.
January Saturdays are terrible for me. So. And we're looking at a Saturday, correct?
I really got my anniversary to work out.
Okay.
I've been working, so just take it.
What's the length of time?
I would say all day, then tonight.
I have a 3-year-old, can we put her in all day? 6 hours, 8 hours?
It may have to be continued. It's, ability to coalesce on the solution.
I guess there's still a lot of questions. What content are we going to bring? What other information are we going to bring? So that is a very valid question. I'm not certain. I mean, I could easily think we would talk about this for 3 or 4 hours, but that also is going to be kind of dependent on what we're talking about and how we want to go about it. Are we also thinking about having this facilitated?
That was my recommendation too, yes.
So I think maybe the time frame, we'd have to lean on our facilitator to give us.
We'll be able to attend this, right? I've got some wonky schedules in February. I'm available the 3rd or the 17th. And then in March, it's the 23rd or the 30th. I'm available the 3rd. So let's go with the 17th.
If you could keep it if you could not go below 3 options for the staff to help us, so they can facilitate finding a almost choice of 3.
I am not available on the 17th. I could do the 3rd. Can't do the 10th.
I can do 3rd, 10th, 17th.
I can do the 3rd, 17th.
3rd sounds.
February 15th.
February 3rd. So everybody good for the 3rd?
Staff just indicated they would like 3 options. Not just the 3rd. That's a good.
Would it be useful to see a recorder get back to you with and try to collect some options from you so that just be difficult to narrow in right now?
Presenting their options.
And the other question is, I don't necessarily need to be there. For you to hash out policy concepts and ideas is not a legal question. You all are very familiar with legal parameters. And if you can coalesce around 3 different things, maybe, then they can be vetted with me. So my schedule also is very crazy, and I don't want to mess with your setting a date. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. If it's essential to your forum review that I'm involved, I can coordinate with Mindy as well, but otherwise, we can just leave me out of the equation at this point.
Okay, maybe we can check on the 3rd, it's top priority, and then if we can't get a facilitator, then we can move on to the dates.
Send out a poll. We'll work on the 3rd for first choice, and then I can send out a poll link. That's some question.
On to concerns from council. Councilor Clark?
We got a few things today. First of all, I would really like to thank the police department. We had community sharing had a situation last week or the week before where some individuals came in the middle of the night and dumped a bunch of donations, which also had trash in them. We were actually able to ascertain a license plate from our video surveillance. And interesting enough, that vehicle apparently had sold. And so they contacted those folks, and they were diligent. They actually found the folks and cited them to court. We try not to go that route often, but this was pretty egregious. And I really just want to give a big thank you for the police department, because they they really stepped up and understood hand, and this isn't one of those high priority things. So I just want to give a big thanks because I know how much, how hard you guys are working. So thank you so much. Please mention that to the officers.
I will, thank you.
Thank you. Second item I have is, I know this is Mr. Klein's last meeting with us. I want to give him a big thank you. He has done an exceptional job up here. He's put up with me amongst others, and so I just really want to offer a big thank you. I have seen your tenure and experience firsthand, and I'm just grateful that you helped guide us through. So thank you so much. And then last item is for the tracker. It dawned on me the other day, we had a lot of talks about the work team, and I know that that's actually coming back, but that might be a really good thing to put on a tracker. The LRT is similar to the MUFTI, but it's for nonprofits who are doing housing, low-income housing. And we've talked about this, there's been some general support. Holty as well.
So Mayor, City Councilor, it's great that you brought that tonight because I had an exact same conversation with Mr. Bongan earlier today, and instead of having it added to the tracker that we have, we would like to present you with a tracker for the planning items that we're working on. The LRT was one of them. Just to let you know where we're at with like hazard mitigation, the bike ped plan, the DLCD grants that we're receiving, our Project Sparrow. We'll do a very similar thing that we can just get to you so that you know that we haven't forgotten the LRT or the HOLT, what the status is on those, so that you're really familiar with what our staff's workload is.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Well, tonight is the 5th night of Hanukkah, which is the festival of lights. I think it's interesting for me to think culturally for a long time, ages basically, people have celebrated lightness during this time of darkness, in particular the winter. And in learning more about Judaism and Cottage Grove, I was taking a chapter out of Councilor Mereday's book of historical research, and I got this book, The Cottage Grove Historical Society Presents Golden Was the Past. This is volume 2. Volume 3, we are writing it right now with all the fun stuff we're doing. And in it, this details that Shivtei Shalom was a Jewish spiritual community in Cottage Grove from 1983 to 1988, and a retreat center. Someone described it to me as a kibbutz, which I thought was interesting. It thrived on 17 acres of land above Dorina Lake. Shivtei Shalom means tribes of peace in Hebrew, and was dedicated to promoting peace and offering a place for all who wanted to celebrate their Jewish heritage. The community was born from a vision of a whole Jewish life, in touch with God and nature, in a community of shared values. They had summer camps, weekend Shabbat or Sabbath events, and Jewish holiday celebrations, and the community drew support from around the country. Initially, there were 3 families, but the community grew to almost 30 members who met weekly for Shabbat meals, prepared events that drew visitors from all over Oregon, such as a Passover Seder and an annual Hanukkah fair, which sounds really cool. For many Cottage Grove residents, Shivtei Shalom was the first exposure to Jewish people and holidays. And throughout the 1980s, the community hosted over 40 workshops and had thousands of visitors for spiritual retreats. Other groups also met at the center, including a Christian ministry retreat and conference for Mobility International, focused on disability issues. Shivtei Shalom closed when Oregon's economic recession was at its worst and finances were tight. Residents found it difficult to support themselves in a rural setting and most of them moved to Eugene, both for work and for proximity to Temple Beth Israel, where Yitzhak husband's Hankin later served as rabbi. I just wanted to share that bit of local history.
Anyone else? Councilor?
Just a quick update from the Lane Economic Committee. We had Connected Lane County present. Connected Lane County is focused on youth services, and it's like my desire is to find out how connected Cottage is with Connected Lane County. But it sounds like they have a great opportunity for students. I think it's from 14 to 24 years old, where they are paying for everything, putting kids up in housing for different programs. They have 3 different paths: professional skills personal skills development, life skills, technological skills. So boosts in like reading, computer coding, mechanics. They have a machine shop. I think they built a new facility in Kelly that has showers and laundry services. So there's a lot of just available building there for students maybe who dropped out, doing super well in the traditional path to gain some technical skills and personal skills and get support there. So that's going to be one of the things I want to find out what our connection is. South Lane here in Cottage Grove, and hoping to take a gander around their facility. So if anybody else is interested in that information on, maybe we can cruise on up there and see what's going on. Thanks.
Anyone else? Councilor Meredith.
Councilor, said the Spark?
Spark is one of those 3. Yeah.
I've heard lots of good things about that. It's through the workforce. So I just want to share, 2 weeks ago, I went to the dedication of the Peace Village Co-op in Eugene. There are 70 units of supported housing. It's an interesting model. It's also done through the small tiny homes.
Square.
Yes, thank you. But the same ones that did the Cottage Village here in Cottage Grove, and it's a very unique model because there's a lot of ownership and self-government. You buy in and then you save, but when you leave the co-op, the buildings stay available. So it's a very interesting model, and it was very inspirational to see. The piece comes from the Peace Presbyterian Church in Eugene that donated the land, and it was an amazing facility to view. I also want to thank all my colleagues for agreeing to work on our #1 priority, getting a resolution for unhoused in this community that will find acceptance among our citizens. I also want to offer support to the rec district that I've been participating in the meetings. Initially, both Councilor Urban and I were drawn to it as part of a request for providing an escape facility for the youth, and thought this would be an excellent partnership. And I think it is going to bring benefits for all citizens should we choose to support it. And I want to compliment the police department as well for their updating regularly on Facebook with the community updates and informing the public of what they have been doing, because so many times they're criticized, and showing actually what they're doing, particularly their quick response to the wild rumor that someone was stabbed at the homeless camp, and immediately gave clarification that that was not the case. And final thanks to Interim Manager Klein for bringing your expertise and dry humor to us, burning the gaps well.
Councilor Sandler.
Thank you. Last weekend, it seems like ages ago now, that would be the 1st and 2nd of December. I served as an advisor in the Watershed Council Board, and the soiree was the 1st. And it's always a fabulous event, and I love being part of supporting a great organization that prioritizes our neighborhood and watersheds. It's marks 10 years of service from Gary Newman, who's just a community sparkler and one of the emblematic people in this town. Make it run the way it does. The next day is the Christmas kickoff. in Cottage, which is one of my favorite days of the year here. My daughter and I helped with the Run Cities Jingle Rush, which had it must have had over 200 participants. That was the biggest 5K ever. And kids went to breakfast with Santa, and we saw Santa again later here in the evening. Stood under the gazebo at Trailhead Park and tried to stay dry, which was mostly futile and a terribly nasty day it was. We ended up winning a beautifully decorated tree from the tax office. It's, you know, when they talk about the spirit of this season and that holiday, I think it's a great big slice of that here in Cottage Grove, and it's just beautiful. And people give so selflessly themselves to make that happen. And it's a kind of energy we need to foster as often as we can. So thanks to everyone.
Councilor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor Solsby.
I want to echo the comments about the Christmas kickoff in Cottage Grove last weekend. It was pretty drippy, but it was a beautiful event with a lot of volunteers and a lot of hard work went into this. It was absolutely amazing to see everybody who braved the drip drops to come downtown and take their photos with Santa, my family included, and listening to the folks sing and have cocoa and soup and just experience being with our community. It's just a wonderful magic space. Thank you, Mr. Klein, for all of your time and your expertise. And herding in the cats is a wonderful phrase to use. We are all cats at times, so really appreciate your knowledge and guidance that you've given us. One of the things that I don't know if we can look into, it was kind of mentioned earlier with the LRFD, but there was something that Councilor Dreer, I thought you brought it up, and it was a way to bring affordability to building equity and buying your first home. So there's an acronym that goes with that.
Hopefully.
Is that what's going? Okay, you've already said that. Good. It's covered now. So let's put that on the chart because that would be awesome to keep going with that. And then there's this next year, 2024 is the 100th year roadshow for the National League of Cities. I know that there's an application process to try and get that big city bus here to promote a beautiful little Cottage Grove, but what a way to spotlight Cottage Grove. I don't know what the requirements are, but I don't know if it's even possible to look into it, but it'd be really cool if we could potentially have them drive through and help promote Cottage Grove and make it real noticeable to the nation. Thank you.
Anyone else? Everybody's already said, but had a great time at the Christmas kickoff. It was fun seeing Santa and them driving through town as usual, per usual. I want to thank all volunteers, and there was a lot. Special thanks to Director Stewart for your hard work in this building late at night, and Sean and I as well, helping out with the pictures with Santa, and Alyssa Gomez and Georgia Haskell from the chamber spent many hours out there. Want to thank them, many other volunteers, too numerous to say. The church does the big event out there. I also want to thank our police chief. He has been meeting with me regularly to keep me updated on the city. He returns my phone calls, there have been many, and quickly. And I really appreciate that transparency, and you give me a lot of clarity, and it's wonderful. Also to our interim, Mr. Klein, and it's one of the things that I think is going to be invaluable to us that you introduced is our issue tracker, and keep us on schedule, and we appreciate it. So thank you very much, and hope you have a great time in Costa Rica, and we're all a little jealous. Okay, well with that, We'll go on to the report from the city manager.
You've all stolen my thunder a little bit. I have 2 items. One, I just want to make sure everybody remembers Thursday evening is our open house. Public, please feel free to be at the armory to meet the candidates at 6:30. And staff as well, so that'll be an opportunity for everybody to come meet and greet the new candidates. So the other one that I have on my list was to return the many, many thank yous to you for having me this opportunity to serve you again. This is my 12th city. I've never failed to learn something. I've learned a ton here. I had so much opportunity to learn about being unhoused and homeless. It's been quite the education learning curve for me, but I hope, I hope we get to where you need to get to address this problem as best we can. Nobody solves this problem to address it. I thank you for letting me be a part of this conversation with you for these past few months and the rest of you. You have a great city. You are a great council, frankly. You have a great staff. And that's all from the heart. You have no reason not to be successful going forward. I think whoever ends up being the city manager is extremely fortunate to have this opportunity in life at this point in their lives to enjoy it. Finally, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with Terry Conlon one more time. We share cities a few times now, so it's always a problem. Thank you for everything.
Ms. Conlon.
Well, Dan, you beat me to it. But so let me just start with, I won't be part of the recruitment, the city manager recruitment or selection process. And I just wanted to make sure that you all know that that's intentional. And I know that the decision-making process is in good hands. Let me know about the work session, the health work session. I will coordinate with Mindy just to give dates, but I, again, don't need to be involved. And I just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with him one last time, a joy I didn't think I was going to have again. And I'm grateful to hear that y'all appreciate him as much as I have over the years. So, yeah, that's all. Oh, holidays. Yeah, I'm not going to see you till January, I don't think.
All right, well, with that, this meeting is adjourned.